Sir.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The coldness between Ukrainian President Zelensky and the Trump administration continues to thaw. That's a good thing. Zelensky's chief of staff, Yermak, saying yesterday that the delegations for the U.S. and Ukraine will meet in the near future to continue peace talks that would end the war in Russia. This was after Zelensky's pronouncement on X that no, I don't think the war is not going to be over for a long, long time, that we are in the business of trying to engineer a peace deal, and I want to work constructively with the President of the United States, and I'm sorry things went sideways on Friday, and so on and so forth. Mike Walls, Trump's NSA, saying, we have taken a step back and are pausing and reviewing all aspects of this relationship, but I just got off the phone before I walked out here to talk to reporters and was talking to his counterpart, the Ukrainian NSA. We're having good talks on location for the next round of negotiations, on delegations, and on substance. The administration has not unstopped its temporary stop to all aid flowing to Ukraine, something I'm sure the Ukrainians are interested in restarting. So what are the prospects that we can get something approaching a cessation of hostilities in the near term? For more on that, pleased to be joined by Gregory Slayton, who's a former U.S. senior diplomat. He's also the co-author of a new book, Portraits of Ukraine, A Nation at War. Gregory Slayton, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be with you. Hello, Amy.
So, just your review of the last week and what you think happened on Friday and in the subsequent days before Zelensky did seemingly a 180 in the last 36 hours.
Yes, Dan. Happy to give you my thoughts. In fact, I was in Kiev a week ago Monday to mark the third anniversary of the Russian invasion. I was invited by Zelensky and his team because of the book. And then I was in Washington for the absolute meltdown last Friday. So maybe one of the few Americans to be in both places. And honestly, I thought there were mistakes on both sides. But as I said to the president and his team, he's going into the Oval Office. President Trump is not going to change. Love him, hate him, whatever. He's not going to change. He is who he is. And Zelensky has to be smart about that, which I don't want to criticize because the guy's been fighting a war for 3 years, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian military killed, wounded, missing in action. That's tremendous pressure. But he clearly overreacted, and that was a mistake. Now, to your question, can things be patched up? Yes, they can, and I believe they will. I have a number of reasons for that, but, happy to go into it if you're interested.
Oh, yeah, we're interested. Please do.
Okay, thanks so much. Well, first of all, Ukraine desperately needs the United States. But I think we all realize that. Yes, Europe is great. Europe's important. Europe does have a military-industrial base, which they are growing. But there's simply a number of key munitions that Europe does not make, right? And there's lots of other munitions that Europe does not make enough of at this time. So America is desperately needed. Obviously, Ukraine is an ally, has been an ally for a long time. Please disregard all this garbage that you hear from certain elements who are really talking Kremlin propaganda about, NATO creating this war and Ukraine invading Russia. None of that's true, okay? Russia invaded. Let's just be clear about that. Russia invaded. They expected, and frankly, every Western intelligence service in the world expected Russia to win within 1 to 2 weeks. The fact that Ukraine is still fighting is frankly a miracle. And here we are, the second day of Lent. I'm a big believer in miracles, and that's a miracle. But Ukraine desperately needs the U.S. I believe Trump is going to force a peace, and I think that's a good thing. We need peace but we also need a peace that's going to be a lasting peace. Remember, Nixon and Kissinger forced a peace a long time ago, but in Vietnam, they forced a peace that wasn't really a peace. It was really just let's get out of Vietnam, right? And 6 months later, the North Vietnamese crushed our allies and, communist hellhole for 20 years. So let's be sure not to follow that disastrous playbook, but peace through strength. I think Donald Trump understands that, and I do believe that's where we're going to go.
Well, you said that the Russian-Ukrainian peace deal must include NATO guarantees because Putin, has a history of breaking 5 previous international treaties.
Correct. Absolutely. Well, not just that. Yes, he's broken. But remember, this is a guy who practices assassination as a part of his foreign policy, right? They have no compunction to go onto other countries' soil and assassinate political opponents, not to mention his own major political opponent, Navalny, who was exiled to a Arctic prison and then effectively killed just over a year ago. Yeah. So this is clearly not the kind of guy that we're used to dealing with as president of the United States. This is someone who's been a dictator for 25 years. His word goes, and if you disagree with him, you fall out of a window, a 32-story window. Just look at the Wikipedia page saying how many oligarchs have fallen out of windows since the start of the the Russian-Ukrainian war. I think it's up to like 41 right now, something like that. So this is not somebody that we can trust. And like Reagan said, trust but verify. That's the key.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I get it. Putin is a murderous autocrat, and you can't trust him. Although this clip that's been making the rounds of Bill Clinton from the 90s talking about his approach to Putin and his relationship with Putin is interesting. He sort of glossed over I guess this was actually probably before he breached it, Putin I'm talking about, but now Bill Clinton may want to revise and extend his remarks about Putin always keeping his word, because obviously he violated the terms of the Budapest Memorandum. But okay, what do you want to do about it? What does a feasible peace look like that Ukraine will begrudgingly live with? I mean, because the moralizing about Putin doesn't get us anywhere.
You're absolutely right. Remember, though, it wasn't just Clinton. Every single American president, including my former boss, George W. Bush, remember President Bush said, I looked into his eyes and I saw a man we can trust.
Yeah,
That's everybody.
Right.
I mean, everybody tried that. Putin's a master manipulator. But what do we do? Well, as I lay out in the book, and thank you for mentioning Portraits of Ukraine, A Nation at War, I want to say that 100% of the profits from that book go to really good Ukrainian charities in Ukraine, and that is desperately needed.
I hope those proceeds aren't being funneled through USAID before they get to Ukraine.
Absolutely not, brother.
All right, good.
Absolutely not. No, they're going to mostly small private charities in Ukraine. One of the ones we love is actually providing prosthetic limbs for children who, stepped on a mine or got hit by a Russian, shrapnel from a Russian drone. I mean, the civilian destruction there, that's something else that needs to be said. Mass war crimes and civilian destruction. Russia deliberately targets hospitals, museums, churches, schools, deliberately. And we know this because I was in Ukraine the day I've been there a lot. And my trip in the last fall, they double tapped a hospital. So the largest Ukrainian children's hospital in Ukraine, they hit it once. They waited an hour for the first responders to gather up, and then they hit it again. So that's no accident, right? So you got to understand who we're dealing with. Now, to your question, yeah, the idea of a European guarantee, European boots on the ground with an American fallback, the Americans have to be involved because we have technology and things that the Europeans do not. That's why America is the key part of NATO. The other countries are important, don't get me wrong, but America is the key member of NATO.
Well,
but some type of guarantee has to be there.
Well, but the mineral deal, is a de facto guarantee, right? I mean, if U.S. economic interests are at stake and U.S. citizens are working in Ukraine in advance of those economic pursuits, then that it should have, and you would anticipate it would have a chilling effect on Putin, drawing the ire of America by endangering or worse any American citizens that may be working in Ukraine. So that's number one. But number two, I still can't get my hands around, and I know that this is not something that Zelensky is going to publicly advertise because it would weaken his position further. But what is Ukraine willing to concede in order to get a peace deal? So you want more security guarantees than the economic alliance. Okay, fine, but that's a discussion point. Where is a line you're willing to draw and say, we don't like it, we're doing this begrudgingly, but we understand pragmatically this is what we have to do to get to peace?
Well, that's an excellent question. You're absolutely right about the minerals deal. American boots on the ground contractors, civilians working on, mining operations. That is an effective guarantee of American involvement should Putin make the huge mistake of, killing any of them, bombing any of them. Now, what Zelensky is willing to concede, neither he nor anyone his administration has ever said. They've always said, no, we want everything returned. But when you talk to them privately, you realize they understand that they're going to have to give up some territory. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons that they've made the big incursion into Kursk Oblast in Russia, so that they can hopefully trade Kursk, which is Russia, absolutely, for some of their territory. That's their hope. But this is all going to come down to, negotiations, difficult, perhaps protracted, hopefully not. But it's going to come down to negotiations. Let's hope that our president can really get both sides of the table, get both sides to agree, and get a lasting peace deal that stops the killing.
Do you think that Zelensky believes he's on a clock? In other words, here's my impression, and I'm a novice, so you correct me if you think I'm off, but my impression is that, Trump is not going to devote unlimited mindshare to this. He has gotten us to this point quickly. He wants to move this towards a cessation of hostilities quickly. As the terms, and I'm sure he's willing to deal on the particulars, and our national security people engage Zelensky's and Putin's and try to figure out where the lines are going to be and so on and so forth. But if we can't broker a deal in the short term, then you run the real risk of America not providing open-ended support, even middling support, the way the Biden administration did, to Ukraine, to continue to prop it up, to continue to sustain their fight, and then you really you run the risk of losing the country.
Well, that's exactly right. And I do think that the Zelensky administration understands that there is a clock, so to speak, as you mentioned. I've certainly let them know that, they've got an opportunity now. You don't like it. Nobody likes giving up territory, especially after, the Russians have invaded and not just killed and wounded maybe 500,000 of your soldiers, but millions and millions of your civilians have been displaced. Many have been, wounded and killed. I mean, civilian casualties in Ukraine and the number who have had to leave their villages and homes is huge. But you're absolutely right. There's an opportunity here. The clock is ticking. You've got an open window, to change metaphors. The Zelensky administration has to grab that opportunity, run with it, and make sure they get the best peace possible.
Gregory Slayton, former U.S. senior diplomat, his new book, Portraits of Ukraine, A Nation at War. Gregory Slayton, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you. And all profits to charity. I hope people buy some. It's doing great. So thank you very much.
All right. Congratulations. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Maha starts with Virago, making America healthy again. With the worst flu season in years, you need an immune system boost. The stronger your immune system, the stronger your body fights and defends against and